2017. I'm Tim Elder, sitting in for the second king of Cheneguk, Hyungjin Moon, and I'm here today with Dr. Richard Panzer, president of the Unification Sanctuary North America.
Good morning.
Good morning, Richard. Let's get right to the weather. It's 36 degrees and clear in the Cheonggyegung area this morning, and it's going to be partly cloudy and pleasant today, getting up to 67 degrees. But tonight it will remain cloudy, but then in the early tomorrow morning we're going to start getting some rain, and tomorrow is going to be a rainy day. Tomorrow and then through to tomorrow night, we should have a few, maybe even several inches of rain. In fact, there's a flash flood watch in effect from tomorrow, from Sunday. So low-lying areas or areas with poor drainage can expect some flooding. Looks like next week is going to be a fairly cool week. Highs will be in the 50s. Mid-50s to low 50s throughout the week, except for maybe towards the end of the week, maybe get up close to 60 degrees. So, yeah, it looks like winter is actually coming. There was some doubt about that, but...
I thought that had been canceled.
Oh, well, it has not. Summer was canceled, but not the winter. All right, let's go to our Rimas. I wanted to go to... I'm in 2 Chronicles today, and chapter 32. And this is the Old Testament has many interesting stories, and this is a story. This is a story about a situation where the king of Assyria attacks Judah and conquers a lot of cities there and attacks Jerusalem. Well, let's see what happens. After these things, the establishment thereof, Sennacherib, king of Assyria, came and entered into Judah, and encamped against the fenced cities, and thought to win them for himself. And when Hezekiah is the king of Judah, right? When Hezekiah saw that Sennacherib was come, and that he was purposed to fight against Jerusalem, he took counsel with his princes and his mighty men to stop the waters of the fountains which were without the city, and they did help him. So they were gathered much people together who stopped all the fountains and the brook that ran through the midst of the land, saying, "Why should the king of Assyria come and find much water?" All right, so the Assyrians are coming, and so they stopped the rivers from flowing out of the city so that the Assyrians would not find water when they got there. And here now, continuing in verse 5, "Also he strengthened himself and built up all the wall that was broken, and raised it up to the towers, and another wall without, and repaired Milo in the city of David, and made darts and shields in abundance." So they're preparing their ammunition and their defenses. "And he set captains of war over the people, and gathered them together to him in the street of the gate of the city, and spake comfortably to them, saying, Be strong and courageous. Hey, don't worry. Be not afraid nor dismayed for the king of Syria, nor for all the multitude that is with him, for there be more with us than with him. With him is an arm of flesh, but with us is the Lord our God to help us, and to fight our battles." And the people rested themselves upon the words of Hezekiah, king of Judah. After this did Sennacherib, king of Assyria, send his servants to Jerusalem, but he himself laid siege against Lachish, and all his power with him, unto Hezekiah, king of Judah, and unto all Judah that were at Jerusalem, saying, Thus saith Sennacherib, king of Assyria, Whereon do you trust that ye abide in the siege of Jerusalem? So king of Assyria is saying, hey, I'm going to go there, I'm going to kill all you guys. What are you doing? So still staying in the city? Aren't you supposed to be running away? Doth not Hezekiah persuade you to give over yourselves to die by famine and by thirst, saying, The Lord our God shall deliver us out of the hand of the king of Assyria? Hath not the same Hezekiah taken away his high places and his altars, and commanded Judah and Jerusalem, saying, Ye shall worship before one altar, and burn incense upon it? Know ye not what I and my fathers have done unto all the people of other lands? Were the gods of the nations of those lands any ways able to deliver their lands out of mine hand? So, the king of Assyria is saying, hey, other people have tried this before, and didn't work out for them. You know, their gods didn't save them. Why should your God save you? Who was there among all the gods of those nations that my fathers utterly destroyed, that could deliver his people out of mine hand, that your God should be able to deliver you out of mine hand?
It looks like psychological warfare.
It does.
Yes.
Yes, it does. That's exactly what it is. Give up. I'm going to beat you. I'm going to kill you. So just pack up and run. That's what he's telling them. Now, therefore, let not Hezekiah deceive you. Now, your leader is lying to you. Let not Hezekiah deceive you, nor persuade you on this manner. Neither yet believe him. For no God of any nation or kingdom was able to deliver his people out of mine hand, and out of the hand of my fathers. How much less shall your God deliver you out of mine hand? And his servant spake yet more against the Lord God and against his servant Hezekiah. He wrote also letters to rail on the Lord God of Israel and to speak against him, saying, As the gods of the nations of other lands have not delivered their people out of mine hand, so shall not the God of Hezekiah deliver his people out of mine hand. So they're really going on about this, aren't they? Give up, give up, give up. Just don't even try to fight. Don't even try to oppose us, resist us. Just get on your way. Give us the city. Then they cried with a loud voice in the Jews' speech unto the people of Jerusalem that were on the wall, to affright them and to trouble them, that they might take the city. So now they're shouting in the language of the Jewish people to make them afraid. And they spake against the God of Jerusalem as against the gods of the people of the earth, which were the work of the hands of man. And for this cause Hezekiah the king and the prophet Isaiah the son of Amoz prayed and cried unto heaven. And the Lord sent an angel, which cut off all the mighty men of valor, and the leaders and captains in the camp of the king of Assyria. So he returned with shame of face to his own land, and when he was come into the house of his God, they that came forth of his own bowels slew him there with the sword. So that all that happened in verse 21. That's one verse. A lot happened right there.
Amazing. His own sons killed him.
That's right, yeah. Well, first God sent an angel, which killed all the soldiers of the Syrian army, the leaders and the captains in the camp of the king of Assyria. So the angel, I guess, went through and just killed all the soldiers and cut them off. And so the Assyrian king returned with shame to his country, and he went into his temple, I guess, to say, hey, this was supposed to happen. How come you're not stronger than their God? I guess that's what he was trying to say. But then his sons went in there, they that came from his own bowels, in other words, his sons, and slew him with the sword. Thus the Lord saved Hezekiah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem from the hand of Sennacherib, the king of Assyria, and from the hand of all other, and guided them on every side. And many brought gifts unto the Lord in Jerusalem, and presents to Hezekiah, king of Judah, so that he was magnified in the sight of all nations from thenceforth. In those days Hezekiah was sick to the death, and prayed unto the Lord, and he spake unto him. He gave him a sign. But Hezekiah rendered not again according to the benefit done unto him, for his heart was lifted up, and therefore there was wrath upon him and upon Judah and Jerusalem. So God was pretty good to Hezekiah. It looked like he was going to get defeated, but the Assyrians were going to take Jerusalem, but God went through and killed all the Assyrian soldiers and made him famous, I guess, and everybody said, wow, yeah, Hezekiah, you're great. Actually, God had done all the work, but Hezekiah took all the glory, and his heart was lifted up. In other words, he became arrogant. He became arrogant, and so God became angry with him, and he became angry not only with Hezekiah, but also with Judah, the country of Judah, and also with Jerusalem. Notwithstanding, Hezekiah humbled himself for the pride of his heart, both he and his inhabitants of Jerusalem, so that the wrath of the Lord came not upon him in the days of Hezekiah. So anyway, Hezekiah repented. So at least in the days of Hezekiah, the wrath of the Lord did not come down upon them. And Hezekiah had exceeding much riches and honor, and he made himself treasures for silver and for gold, and for precious stones, and for spices, and for shields, and for all manner of pleasant jewels. Storehouses also for the increase of corn, and wine, and oil, and stalls for all manner of beasts, and coats and flocks, coats for flocks. Moreover, he provided him cities and possessions of flocks and herds in abundance, for God had given him a substance very much. This same Hezekiah also stopped the upper watercourse of Gihon, and brought it straight down to the west side of the city of David, and Hezekiah prospered in all his works. Howbeit in the business of the ambassadors of the princes of Babylon, who sent upon him to inquire of the wonder that was done in the land, God left him to try him, that he might know all that was in his heart. So after, things were going well, the economy was growing hand over fist, and so then the ambassadors, the princes of Babylon, sent a messenger to say, "Hey, how are you? How's all this happening? How are you so successful?" And God says, left him to try him, to test him, to see how Hezekiah would do without God's guidance and inspiration. So what is he going to do? This is really, we'll get into this later, but this is, anyway, we'll get into this later. I think that's a very important thing right there. Now the rest of the acts of Hezekiah and his goodness, behold, they are written in the visions of Isaiah the prophet, the son of Amos, and in the book of the kings of Judah and Israel. And Hezekiah slept with his fathers, and they buried him in the chiefest of the sepulchres of the sons of David. And all Judah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem did him honor at his death. And Manasseh his son reigned in his stead. So eventually, we don't really hear what he said to the ambassadors from Babylon. But we do know that after this, Babylon did invade Judah, right? And they will eventually go into slavery in Babylon. So this story is very interesting, but I wanted to go back to this place where God left. If I start on that, it's going to really go off, and I can see where I'm going with this already. I'm not. But anyway, what I want to say is that to try him, that he might know all that was in his heart. That God left him to try him, that he might know all that was in his heart. That was the situation of the Han mother in September, from September 2012 to February 2013. That she was alone, so that just like Hezekiah here was, God left him to try him. So she was having a test then, and unfortunately she failed her test to see. Or to it's not just God saying, well, let's see what's going to happen. It's basically because we're in a war between God and Satan, and so rather than looking this as a kind of as God sort of frivolously testing someone, I think it's important to understand that this is a person having the chance to show God, and even more importantly, to show Satan what he's made of, or what she's made of. And I think in our life of faith, I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but there are times when it seems that God has left us, where we can pray, or it's actually difficult to pray, but even we try to go through the motions of prayer, and it doesn't seem like our prayers are going anywhere. We're not really resonating with anything in our prayers. I mean, these days, I can pray and boom, I can feel like I can really connect. But that hasn't always been the case. And there may come another time in my life of faith when that will not be the case again. When God will leave me alone, in order to, in one sense, to test me, but also to give me a chance to prove myself,
right.
And also to prove myself to God and to Satan, because eventually, if I'm going to perfect my character, then I should be able to, I certainly, as Adam should have, I should be able to stand up to Satan and say, hey, this is right, this is wrong, and I'm going this way. I'm going with God, and I'm going to go with what I know to be good, and I'm going to reject what I know to be evil. That's a very important time for us to understand what that is, because it can be a pretty trying time. Those are really trying times. So when you experience that, so that was what was happening with Hezekiah, but there are many aspects of the story that I wanted to get into. But did you want to say anything about that particular
No,
aspect?
I think everyone, even Father, last night I was reading from, I forget which speech, but Father says that to enter heaven, you actually need to get Satan's signature.
Mm-hmm.
That's not just God, but Satan has to say, yes, this person has nothing to do with me, and approving you. And so we all have to go through those times of where we're not feeling necessarily inspired by or connecting with, as you put it, connecting with God. And those are challenging times, actually. And I guess it's inevitable. None of us can escape that. Right?
It's especially interesting that this was a time when Hezekiah was given a lot. He was because externally it appeared as though he had defeated the Assyrians, although he had not.
Right.
And he says, after the Assyrians retreated, Hezekiah did very well economically, financially, and so he was really at the pinnacle of his glory and of his power. He became proud, but also he repented. But then God really tested him at that point to see what was really in his heart. But then eventually he died, and he was buried, and he was succeeded by his son.
Yeah, I think that when God has blessed us a lot, we have to be very careful, because that's the dangerous, isn't that the
Yes.
dangerous place.
Mm-hmm.
And it actually, you think about it, it's when you're not doing well that you pray more. I mean, in my experience, when things are not going well, that's the time when when I pray very seriously. And I mean, it's interesting. Yeah.
Okay, shall we go to our second Rima in the Cheonseongeong this morning? The blessing. I'm in the book on blessed families, blessed family, chapter 1, True Parents and the Blessing. The very beginning of that chapter on page 1239, and very short paragraph today. The blessing signifies the true parents and the true children, coming together to fulfill the purpose of creation.
Wow. That's a beautiful statement.
Go ahead, speak.
When the parents and the children come together to fulfill. Anyway, I don't have the exact words, but
to fulfill the purpose of creation. Yeah, so it's fulfilling the four-position foundation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, it's interesting. Carrie Williams and I, we've been, and a few other people have been working on going through the OSDP lecture series, and the center of unity is, we have that diagram, which I think is not correct. It shows, God, man, woman, and children, but actually, it's the Father. The Father has to be in that central. The center of God's will and of the family, right? So the unity is created on the true Father. That's the center of the family's will, and the center of the fulfillment of Adam. Adam has to stand in that position, and even the children need to unite with Adam. So yeah.
The blessing signifies the true parents and true children coming together to fulfill the purpose of creation.
You know, to me, the most amazing miracle is that because of the failure of the Han Mother, I've been getting many emails over the last year or so. People knew that Hak Ja Han had failed, and they were saying, where's the true mother? And of course, I didn't have an answer, but God provided. We have this wonderful, beautiful, true mother, Kang, who is constantly testifying to Father and lifting up Father and confessing her own struggles in faith and how she's able to overcome those. And to me, God is a miracle worker. God provided the true mother. I mean, I certainly had no idea what the solution would be, but anyway, God is a very dramatic. I have to say, God is very dramatic sometimes, and yeah.
So God is guiding us. Yes,
Yes.
God is guiding us. But let's also not make the mistake of Hezekiah and think that we are doing it ourselves.
That's true.
Right, let's take a break now, and we'll come back with some news. Quite a lot going on today, but we're going through the news from a Tony Group perspective after this.
Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood. The history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun. To the best in compact concealed carry. Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit car.com today.
Tell me who will be like Jesus, to the least of these. Boys become kings, girls will be queens, wrapped in your majesty. When we love.
Welcome back to the King's Report for October 28th, 2017. I'm Tim Elder, here with Richard Panzer, and we're here in place of the second king of Chandraguk, Yang Jin-moon. Something very interesting is going on in the world today. After in the early 90s, we had the breakup of the Soviet Union, and also the breakup of during the 90s we had the breakup of Yugoslavia, and a lot of new countries came into being as a result of that. But as we'll see in a moment, not all of the countries really joined the international community. Some of them, and we can talk about that. How does a country come into being? But anyway, that's something that we can think about for a while. But what happened yesterday was that the Catalonia region of Spain declared its independence, and Spain now is taking some steps to prevent that independence. The international community is not recognizing Catalonia's independence, but this is obviously in the history of Spain it's a very important point in time, but also I think in the history of well, we'll see. We'll see if this actually amounts to something, or if it just turns out to be a footnote.
I mean, I have a question about this, because my understanding is that.
Well, let's go with the article first.
Oh, okay. All right.
Let's
fine.
find out what's going on first. Then we can ask
All
our
right,
questions.
okay.
Spain sacks Catalan government after independence declaration. The Madrid government sacked Catalonia's president and dismissed its parliament on Friday, hours after the region declared itself an independent nation in Spain's gravest political crisis since the return of democracy 4 decades ago. Yeah, so democracy is only 40 years old in Spain. A new regional election will be held in Catalonia on December 21st, Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy said in a televised address on a day of high drama. As well as removing Carles Puigdemont as head of the autonomous region, he also fired its police chief and said central government ministries would take over the Catalan administration. Spain is living through a sad day, Rajoy said. We believe it is urgent to listen to Catalan citizens, to all of them, so that they can decide their future and nobody can act outside the law on their behalf. As he spoke, thousands of independent supporters packed this St. James Square in front of the Catalan regional headquarters in Barcelona, their earlier joyful mood somewhat dampened by Rajoy's actions. In a stunning show of defiance of Madrid, the Catalan parliament had voted in the afternoon to make a unilateral declaration of independence. Despite the emotions and celebrations inside and outside the building, it was a futile gesture, as shortly afterwards the Spanish Senate in Madrid approved the imposition of direct rule. Several European countries, including France and Germany and the United States, also rejected the independence declaration and said they have supported Rajoy's efforts to preserve Spain's unity. The crisis has now reached a new and possibly dangerous level, as independent supporters have called for a campaign of disobedience. Immediately after news of the vote, Spanish shares and bonds were sold off, reflecting business concerns over the turmoil. Catalonia held an independence referendum on October 1st, which was declared illegal by Madrid and marred by heavy-handed national police tactics to stop it. Although the referendum endorsed independence, it drew only 43% turnout, as Catalans who opposed independence largely boycotted it. The independence push has caused deep resentment around Spain. The chaos has also prompted a flight of business from Catalonia and alarmed European leaders who fear the crisis could fan separatist sentiment around the continent. Catalonia is one of Spain's most prosperous regions and already has a high degree of autonomy, but it has a litany of historic grievances exacerbated during the 1939-75 Franco dictatorship, when its culture and politics were suppressed. In Barcelona, Jordi Marcade, a 32-year-old engineer celebrating with friends, said he had mixed feelings about the day's events. It's a day for history, but many of us here also know we are not independent. They have the force. We are proud to have declared independence, but we know this is not something definitive. It is not certain whether the new election can resolve the crisis, as it could increase the numbers of independence supporters in Parliament. Also unclear is how Rajoy's other measures will work on the ground because of the reactions of civil servants and the regional police, known as the Mossos d'Esquadra, who are reported to be divided in their loyalties. The main secessionist group, the Catalan National Assembly, called on civil servants not to follow orders from the Spanish government and urged them to follow peaceful resistance. Tensions are likely to rise significantly over the coming days, Antonio Barroso of Teneo Intelligence said in a note. Demonstrators might try to prevent the police from removing Catalan ministers from their offices. If the central government decides to do so, this increases the risk of violent clashes with police. A big crowd of independent supporters gathered outside the regional parliament in Barcelona, shouting liberty in Catalan and singing traditional songs as the independence vote went through. Among them was Monica Sanz, 44, a university lecturer who wore a Catalan flag around her neck. We tried all peaceful means. Moderate people have reached this point because it was impossible to make an agreement with Spain, she said. The motion passed after a passionate debate from advocates and opponents of independence, said Catalonia constituted an independent, sovereign, and social democratic state. Lawmakers from members of three national parties, the People's Party, the Socialist, and Ciudadanos, walked out before the vote. Members of the pro-independence parties and the far-left Podemos then voted 70-10 in favor in a secret ballot aimed at hindering any attempt by Madrid to lay criminal charges on them. Soon to be sacked, Puigdemont left the chamber to shouts of president, and mayors who had come from outlying areas brandished their ceremonial batons and sang the Catalan anthem, the Reapers. Catalonia is and will be a land of freedom in times of difficulty and in times of celebration, now more than ever, Puigdemont said on Twitter. But within an hour, the upper house of the Spain's parliament in Madrid authorized Rajoy's government to rule Catalonia directly. Spain's constitutional court started a review of the vote for prosecutors to decide if it constituted rebellion. In Brussels, the president of the European Council, Donald Tusk, said the independence vote changed nothing and the EU would only deal with the central government. Spain's IBEX fell, that would be the stock market, fell as much as 2.1% to a 4-day low during the day. 10-year government bonds hit a day high. The yields hit a day high, and the euro dipped against the dollar on Friday after the Catalan independence declaration. The region contributes about a fifth of Spain's economy. Okay, so that's the overall thing. But also, I wanted to look at an article about sort of the breakup of countries, especially in Europe. Europe, you know, it breaks up, comes together, breaks up, comes together. This has been going on a long time, right?
Okay, I have a big list of questions, but
all right,
go ahead.
All right, let's hear your questions. Some may be answered later, but
okay.
What are your questions?
All right, okay, number one. Okay, this is one of the most prosperous regions in
Yes.
Spain.
Correct.
Okay, so it's not as if, I mean, that to me is significant. I mean, it's not as if they're starving or that's number one. And it does mention that there's some historical grievances from the dictator Franco. Okay, they have some resentment. But I'm also thinking about United States. Okay, what if California said, you know what, we don't like these right-wing, the rest of this country is too conservative for us, you know, we want to be liberated. California is, if it were its own nation, it would be the sixth richest country in the world. So it's certainly, I mean, they also have a lot of migrants that they have to take care. I understand that, but my point is, I have mixed feelings about this because the same thing could, I mean, many of the leftists are saying that the entire southwest portion of the United States actually belonged to Mexico at one point, and they may want to re-affiliate with Mexico or create their own nation. So, what are your thoughts about this?
I didn't hear a question there, but you know, California in the United States, prior to the Civil War, you know, at the time after the election of President Lincoln in 1860. And actually, even during the election campaign, southern states were saying that, hey, you know, if this guy Abraham Lincoln is elected, we're not going to stay in this union. We're going to leave. And actually, there were three candidates in that election, and Lincoln was elected with less than 50% of the vote because there were three candidates. And sure enough, after he was elected as an anti-slavery candidate, states in the South began to leave, even before his inauguration. And at that point, what they said was, okay, the Constitution of the United States does not say anything about secession, but the 10th Amendment in the Bill of Rights says that, I think it is the 10th Amendment of the Bill of Rights, says that anything that is not in the Constitution is reserved for the states and for the people. So because there's nothing in the Constitution of the federal government about secession, about leaving the Union, that means that it's up to us, according to the 10th Amendment. And so these states, they would have, they would take votes in their state legislatures, like Catalonia did, or they would have separate secession conventions, and they would, vote to leave and say, okay, we've left. And then there was a war, and the South lost. And then what happened after the Civil War was that the Supreme Court of the United States said that that interpretation of the Constitution was wrong. That even though there's nothing in the Constitution about leaving the Union, when you look at the document overall, they said, I don't remember the exact language, but overall, and I think, I think they said it is a union in perpetuity. In other words, once you join, you cannot leave. That's what the Supreme Court said. And that has been, that ruling in about 1869 or so, I think, has been, so in other words, the Supreme Court said the secession never happened. These states that said they seceded, that said they left the Union, that said they created their own country called the Confederate States of America, that all never happened legally speaking, because that whole thing was just illegal. Kind of saying what the Madrid government is saying about Catalonia now. So now, as long as that Supreme Court ruling stands, there's no way for California to secede unless they declare war on the United States of America or something like that. And really,
And look, people are tearing down statues all over the United States of people that they think do not deserve respect. I mean, hopefully our country will not continue to become more polarized. There are people who want there to be a race war in America. There are people who want America to be broken up because they're jealous of America or think that we've not been just in the world. So there are people who would like to split up this country. Now, what if Lincoln had said, you know what, I don't agree with slavery, but these states, they have the right to secede, and I don't want to shed the blood of American young men to try to stop them. He might have been more popular. I mean, because I think the war was not that as, I mean, it wasn't as popular.
Yes,
it wasn't that popular. There were riots against the draft in New York City.
In New York City, and a lot of people were killed. Yes.
Yeah. So then would America have been able to...
Lincoln actually bombed New York City.
Oh, really? I didn't know about that one. So
well, he sent in federal troops, but also he had ships in New York Harbor, fire their cannons at the rioters in New York City. Yes.
Now, I grew up in New York. Why didn't I learn about that? In any case, had he done that, would America have been able to be used by God? I believe, or Father taught, that America was chosen by God to be a beacon of democracy and...
But fundamentally, we're in a completely different providential period now.
Okay.
You're talking about a time when America was preparing to, the world was preparing to receive the Messiah.
Yes.
And the United States, as you said, was being prepared to act as the God-side archangel country, and then later on the elder son country. Whereas now we're in a fundamentally different period. Now we're in a period of judgment. And so the reason that I think that this Catalan situation is important is because I think it may, I don't know, it may wind up just to be a blip and nothing will come of it. Or it could be the start of, just like the Soviet Union was broken up, it could be the start of the breakup of the European Union and even the breakup of the United States over the next decades, perhaps. But I don't know. I mean, with this, we saw in Chronicles where I think in one night God destroyed the Assyrian army, I guess. Just sent an angel through there, and boop, 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 and that was it. So things can happen. Things can happen very quickly in God's providence. But I think because we're in a time of judgment,
Right.
God raised up America for a certain purpose.
Right.
But if America has betrayed that purpose and is not fulfilling that purpose, then maybe God now needs to break up America.
Well, I mean, in the reading, Hezekiah repented,
Yes.
and had Hezekiah not repented, I'm sure that, well, eventually Judah was destroyed by Babylon.
And it says that because he repented, the Lord's wrath did not come on them during the days of Hezekiah. That doesn't mean that everything was okay. It just means that, okay, during the days of Hezekiah,
Right.
you're going to be okay, but
Right.
watch out later on. And sure enough, they did. They were enslaved in Babylon, weren't they? Yeah. So there are consequences to actions. There are consequences.
Well, I mean, I think that, I mean, my perspective is that the election of Donald Trump, in my view, was God giving America a chance to repent. I mean, and he's an unlikely champion of repentance, but still, he. Anyway, I'm getting off that subject.
Yes, we are getting off the subject. We're talking about Catalonia, remember? Catalonia. I did want to go through just to remind ourselves of what happened during the breakup of the Soviet Union. Several European territories have unilaterally declared independence since the end of World War II, mainly because of the collapse of the Soviet Union and Yugoslavia. But none has officially broken away from the European Union, created in 1993, even though movements demanding more independence exist in various countries. Catalonia's declaration of independence is the first for the European Union. So this is actually an AFP article, a French news service, and it's interesting to me that this news service and this reporter, whoever wrote this, is putting this kind of on an equal footing with the Soviet Union and Yugoslavia. You had the Soviet Union, you had Yugoslavia, and now you have European Union. That kind of. So that's very interesting to me. In the collapse of the Soviet Union, led to the biggest wave of independence movement in Europe since 1945. In March 1990, Lithuania became the first Soviet republic to declare independence. Soviet troops intervened in January 1991, but withdrew after a confrontation in which 13 people were killed. In June, Russia proclaimed its sovereignty under Boris Yeltsin. 9 Soviet republics went on to declare their independence in August and September. In December the same year, Russian, Ukrainian, and Belarusian leaders signed a treaty ending the Soviet Union and formulating the creation of 15 countries, including the 3 Baltic states, which joined the EU in 2004. The separatist tensions in the post-Soviet region still persist today. Transnistria, a region of Moldova mainly inhabited by Russian speakers, proclaimed its independence and took up arms in 1992, but it is recognized by no other state. So that's one example of it, and this is maybe what Catalonia will wind up as. So whether they will wind up like Lithuania, or where the international community recognizes it and it has joined the international sort of community, a society, and people trade with it and everything, or will it wind up like Transnistria, where they declare independence and no one recognizes it? So that brings up the question of what constitutes a country then? If you just declare independence, is that enough? Or, we would not agree with this, but most people would say that, well, if you join the UN, then you're a country. Some people would say that. In other words, if these transnational organizations accept you as a member, you're a country because only countries are allowed to join those organizations. But that's problematic. So, what constitutes at what point do you become a country? That's something that we can think about. Abkhazia and South Ossetia, 2 separatist regions in Georgia, were at the root of the Russia-Georgia conflict in August 2008. The conflict ended with Moscow's recognition of the two regions' independence, but only Nicaragua, Venezuela, and Nauru have done the same. So these regions of Georgia, which is a former Soviet country, and Georgia broke away from the Soviet Union, or was one of the countries that resulted from the breakup of the Soviet Union. But then two of their regions declared independence, and only three countries recognized them. Nicaragua recognized it for some reason. Venezuela, Nauru recognizes it for some reason, but nobody else does. So are these a country? Is there a country called Abkhazia? Is there a country called South Ossetia? If you ask the U.S. State Department, they will say no. But if you ask Nicaragua, they will say yes. Yes, we recognize that country. In Ukraine, the two separatist self-styled republics of Lugansk and Donetsk declared their independence in 2014 after referendums, like Catalonia, largely dependent on Russia. They are not recognized by the international community. So, and also we talk about, this article goes on to talk about Yugoslavia. And in Yugoslavia, there were wars that were involved in the breakup of that country. And more than 100,000 people died. 2.2 million people became refugees. The small country Montenegro declared independence from Serbia in 2006. And Cyprus, for example, in 1974, Greek Cyprus nationalists, backed by Athens, launched a coup aimed at joining the former British colony to Greece. The coup broke down after a few days, but not before Turkish troops invaded the north of the Mediterranean island to protect the Turkish Cypriot minority. In November '83, the breakaway Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus was declared, covering 38% of the territory, and where Turkish troops are still deployed. Only Ankara recognizes the entity. In 2004, the divided island joined the EU, but its laws only apply to the non-Turkish held southern parts of the republic. So creating a country is because we are thinking of creating a country. So what constitutes a country, I think, is an important question for us.
Well, it seems like you better have your ability to defend your country.
Exactly, exactly, and that's kind of the point that I'm trying to get to. That you can declare sovereignty, but you really need to be able to defend that sovereignty for it to be effective. So places that say, okay, we're independent, but then you can't really exercise that independence, can't really exercise that sovereignty unless you're able to defend it. Either by, defending it doesn't necessarily mean by arms, although certainly arms is a crucial part of that, but also being able to form relationships and alliances with other countries so that they will, for one reason or another, recognize your independence and say, yeah, this is a real country. Because then you can start trading and start recognizing each other's passports and stuff like that. But in the situation in Catalonia, Barcelona is the capital of Catalonia, or the regional headquarters, depending on who you are, whether you're a Catalan or a Spanish. And Barcelona, last night, there was some violence. And especially because the people in Catalonia themselves are not united. In fact, they're about evenly split over this whole independence thing. In fact, we were talking with our brother Juan Piquet in Spain, who lives in Madrid, but Madrid, although he's of Catalan origin.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and we were talking with him in a King's Report a few weeks ago when this thing first began. And he pointed out that, because Catalonia is one of the most prosperous regions in Spain, a lot of people from other regions in Spain go there and to live there, and perhaps have been there for a long time, for reasons of jobs and so forth. But also Catalan people, a lot of Catalan people like Juan live in other areas of Spain as well. Like Juan himself is originally a Catalan origin, but he lives in Madrid. So that also complicates the situation. So a lot of these articles point out that the Catalan people themselves, or according to opinion polls, are about evenly split over the idea of whether the region should become independent. But there's no real. We don't really know that yet, because in the October 1 referendum, people who were opposed to independence mostly boycotted the referendum itself. But maybe this election in December 21st will show something. But there was some violence, and apparently today there is a rally scheduled in Barcelona by people who oppose independence, who want unity with Spain. So we'll have to see. Here in this article, this is polls show that Catalans themselves are split pretty much down the middle on the issue of independence from Spain. Dozens of opposition MPs walked out before Friday's secret ballot in the Catalan Parliament, one lamenting a dark day for democracy. Later in the day, hundreds of anti-independence protesters gathered in central Barcelona, chanting, "I am Spanish, Spanish." Waving the Spanish flag, several demanded Puigdemont be jailed for sedition, even as prosecutors announced they would file rebellion charges against him next week. He risks up to 30 years in jail. Puigdemont, of course, is the leader of Catalonia. But outside the seat of the Generalitat, the Catalan government, the mood was festive, with fireworks and music. "We are a free country," one person said. So Catalan resentment at Madrid's perceived interference has been building for years. Compounded by the 2008 economic crisis, many complain that the region contributes more to the central purse than it gets back. The UN urged both sides Friday to seek solutions within the framework of the Spanish Constitution and through the established political and legal channels. So organizations like the EU and the UN do not want this to happen. They were all perfectly happy when the Soviet Union broke up.
Right.
But when they start to break up, that's another matter. But, I think God is fair.
And I think the EU, I mean, look what happened with Brexit, and I'm sure this is not the last. I mean, we're going to see more of this, I bet.
Well, that's interesting because I don't have it right now, but the one country or one area that seemed not entirely opposed to this was Scotland, where
because they want to be they want to be next.
Well, that's interesting because Scotland voted to stay in the EU.
Right.
They in the Brexit vote in the UK, Scotland was strongly opposed to Brexit. They were the Remainers won in Scotland, but of course they also want to become have more autonomy from the UK. So it's a complicated situation there as well. But the foreign minister of Scotland sort of said, well, we can understand where they're coming from, basically. That was the statement there. But also, like you said, other areas in Europe, and this is what the EU really fears. For example, the northern part of Italy, for example. It's also the more prosperous part of the country, and they're paying more to the central government in taxes than what they're getting back, and that's one of the complaints of the people in Catalonia. So we'll see we'll see. That's why I say this thing could develop beyond where it is now, or it could fizzle. We don't know. We'll have to watch. But I have a feeling that it might grow.
Well, I mean, let's brainstorm and I don't want. I'm sorry. I don't want to speculate on America's
Why not?
future. Well, I mean, look, the values of New York and California are very, very tending towards socialism. Look at the mayor of New York City, de Blasio, right? So they could argue, I mean, New York City is the economic capital, many argue, of America, and some people say of the world. Very wealthy, Wall Street. And California is also very wealthy and also very, very leftist. They could say, okay.
Well, even within those states, even within California, and even within New York,
That's
you have a polarization.
Yeah, that's true. The upstate New York is
Yeah.
different. That's true.
That's very different.
Yes.
And maybe people in upstate New York will want to say, or maybe New York City will say, "Hey, we're paying more in taxes to Albany than we're getting back."
That's true. I think they do say that.
They do say that, yeah.
Yeah.
Or maybe people in Northern California will say, "Hey, we don't like these socialist policies. We don't know what's going to happen." But the world can change very quickly. The world can change very quickly, and when it starts to change, God's providence can move forward at breathtaking speed.
I mean, I worry about, I think there are a lot of passions. We're seeing a lot of passions being acted out here, but people, in the euphoria, I think people forget what they have, and you don't remember what you have until you've lost it in many cases. So.
God is always looking for the quickest way to accomplish His purpose of creation. And we don't know what that way is. We don't know what that strategy is. But God is in charge. He is at work. Let's pray that we can always be guided by Him.
Yes.
And live according to our consciences, so that we can be with Him at all times. Let's take a break now, and we'll come back with more news from a Jonica perspective.
Little hands, shoeless feet, lonely eyes looking back at me. Will we leave behind the innocent to grieve?
Welcome back to the King's Report for October 28th, 2017. I'm Tim Elder, sitting in for the second King of Cheongguk, Hyungjin Moon. And I'm here with Dr. Richard Panzer, the president of the Unification Sanctuary North America. Let's just go through some of the headlines that we have this morning. Box office, Clooney Damon Suburbicon as DOA. Top 20% pay 95% of all income tax. That's the highest ever. Wall Street Journal says $1 million mistake. Defensive Republicans flirt with raising tax rate. Pretenders legend Chrissie Hynde storms off stage after a C-word outburst. Nancy Pelosi face spasms, utter gibberish, confuses trillions and billions. Maxine Waters whips a South Carolina crowd into tizzy against the president. Google silent on lawsuit accusing YouTube of censoring conservatives. Surrogate mom births own biological son in rare incident. Great again, GDP 3%. It seems like the economy is doing pretty well under President Trump. Economy shrugs off hurricanes. Mueller probe leaks to CNN. First charges filed, in quotes. As CNN published a story that Mueller has filed charges against somebody, but we don't know against who and what those charges are until Monday.
Maybe he's going to indict himself for that's not a serious statement.
Okay, well,
maybe he should.
Between now and Monday, we can speculate all we want, but I guess on Monday we'll find out. David Gergen says the dam was about to break. Bernstein says Trump officials facing 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, or 50 years for whatever these crimes are. But on the other hand, Mueller is facing new pressure to resign. Mom jailed over vaccine refusal, says don't give my son any more shots. Authorities put brakes on Vegas shooting information flow. The information coming out of that Vegas massacre is so confusing and so contradictory that maybe putting a brake on it is trying to save face, I think. But that's someone's hiding. A lot of people are hiding something. Not just someone hiding something, but a lot of people are hiding something. But I think in this day and age, eventually it's got to come out. Whatever it is they're hiding, it's going to come out. More women accuse Halperin of harassment. He says he's sorry, but over 300 claims against Toback, another director. Leon Wieselstier, a reckoning. Hooker fashion is in. Is that something new? I don't know. I thought that was already in.
That's nothing new there.
Madonna, a favela chick storm. Glamorizes violence and poverty.
Well, what else is new? I mean,
yeah.
They always do that.
College costume crackdown ramps up as Halloween draws near. Pentagon plans a national blackout drill.
Okay, EMP.
EMP.
Yeah.
Catholic hospital group grants euthanasia to mentally ill. Whoa, that is very dangerous. Panetta investigate Clinton DNC dossier payment. That's interesting because Leon Panetta himself is a Democrat. Tech stocks roar again in faint echo of 2000. Concussed Simon Cowell home after fall. A mystery call to paper minutes before JFK killed. So some of the JFK files were of course released 2 days ago, and I guess some tidbits are coming out. One of them is that a paper in the United Kingdom received a rather strange call about 25 minutes before the assassination, telling the paper to call the American embassy for a huge story. But Hoover, that's J. Edgar Hoover, public must believe Oswald acted alone. CIA plotted to kill Castro, staged Miami bombings.
Of course, I mean, Hoover believed that he had acted alone and was concerned that there'd be.
Well, that's one interpretation.
Okay, all right.
All right. We can disagree.
That's a big
on
topic.
We can disagree on that.
All right.
So either he believed that Oswald acted alone, and he was concerned that the public also believed that,
Oh, I see.
or he knew that
Yeah.
Oswald did not act alone, but he thought it was important that the public be fooled into believing that he did act alone. So there are two possible interpretations.
That's true.
All right.
Very true.
The CIA plotted to kill Castro. We did that. Intercepted call from Oswald to KGB. Spooks suppress last files. So for President Trump is giving the intelligence agencies 180 days to explain more about why certain files should be not released from the JFK assassination. Sinclair winning streak has Dems crying foul. ESPN bracing for another round of widespread layoffs. And a Time magazine cutbacks begin.
It's interesting. I mean, this ESPN story
Mm-hmm.
and the NFL. I mean, the sports in America is there's some big changes coming
Mm-hmm.
in the sports world
Mhm.
because this racial issue is not resolved. Yes.
And baseball shall reign supreme.
They haven't had the problems yet that the
Well, they have a little bit, but not much, yeah.
yeah. So
Yes. The Astros, by the way, won last night. So now they're ahead 2-1 in the World Series. Anti-Trump, we're in a Breitbart headlines now. Anti-Trump dossier, original funder Paul Singer, an Open Borders establishment Republican billionaire. So this whole thing about the dossier, whether, who paid for that,
yeah.
is becoming very, very interesting. The Democratic National Committee obviously had a hand in it. That seems to be established, and now, but also some establishment Republicans as well.
Yeah, I mean, before the Democrats were involved, the
Mm.
Republic. I guess this was when Trump had not yet won the nomination,
And they were trying to stop him.
trying to stop him.
Yeah. But I think even afterward,
I think all campaigns do opposition research,
well, they do. But this was,
but not so many hire
Yeah.
somebody outside the country that's
Yeah.
against the.
well, but
laws.
the thing that may be criminal here is that the Democratic National Committee did not list this research firm
Right.
on their campaign finance disclosures where they were supposed to.
Right.
I think that's one of the things that could bring criminal charges. But anyway, we'll sift through this.
I mean, the ironic thing, Hillary Clinton was part of the Watergate investigation, and would it not be ironic if she were convicted or found to be guilty and imprisoned, perhaps, I don't know, because of a cover-up?
Well, in the Watergate investigation, of course, she had to leave that investigation because of unethical practices.
Well, at least she's being consistent.
Yes, she is. She is consistent. Establishment GOP mega donors failed plot to stop the Trump. Rubio dodges a question about mega donors' funding of anti-Trump research firm. Leaky, CNN gets big scoop. Charges sealed until Monday. Big tech trembles as Bannon denounces lords of Silicon Valley. Bananas. CNN contributor Hillary Spock's Brian Fallon falsely compares Ed Gillespie to white supremacists. Ed Gillespie, I think, is running for the to be
Virginia.
governorship of Virginia,
Right.
and I think he's been endorsed by President Trump. Jewish Republicans excoriate McConnell, Senate leadership fund for running Hillary playbook against Bannon. Astros Yuli Gurriel mocks Dodgers pitcher Yu Darvish with racist gesture after home run.
Okay, we don't want to do that kind of thing.
Yu Darvish was in the Japanese Baseball League for a long time. I think he has an interesting ethnic background. I have to look it up again, but he's not native Japanese. But he started his career in the Japanese Baseball League. Cuba sonic attacks on U.S. diplomats were cricket and cicada noises. This is a situation where U.S. Diplomats in Cuba suffered physical damage because of some kind of a sound attack.
High-pitched or the various pitches of sonic.
Well, we don't. Not all the information has been released about that, but some actual physical damage was suffered by, maybe loss of hearing was suffered by U.S. diplomats and even some family members, dependents, who were stationed in Cuba. And I think the U.S. continues to look into this, although diplomats have been recalled to the U.S., and also some Cuban diplomats in the U.S. have been kicked out as a result of this situation. It's kind of simmering right now. We don't really know entirely what's going on there.
I doubt it involved crickets and.
Probably not.
Cicadas.
Yes, I've heard cicadas, and it has not affected my hearing very much. Suburbicon, Clooney delivers racially condescending D-level Fargo. Van Jones, Trump doesn't want to solve opioid crisis, wants to demagogue about it. Maher telling people not to protest police or question generals is not American. CNN's accosted at the White House. Are you trying to gin up your own Russian investigation with Uranium One? Uranium One, of course, being the company that was allowed to be purchased by the Russians, and thereby the Russians got a hold of 20% of the U.S. Uranium supply. China pressures Trump administration to deny Taiwanese president entry to Hawaii. This happens every time the Taiwanese president tries to even change planes in the United States, going to someplace else. Always the Chinese in Beijing protest this. Border wall prototypes face testing. Future funding questions. Acorn founder Wade Rathke comes out for Doug Jones. Doug Jones being the Democratic Senate candidate in Alabama, who's going up against the Republican candidate. That would be Judge Moore there. That's the Republican candidate, Roy Moore. Poll says Gillespie leads by 2 points over the Northam for a Virginia governor race.
Oh, really? That's a shift. He was behind.
Well, it depends on which poll you look at.
Oh, I
Probably.
see, yeah.
I mean, we know about polls, right? Yeah. Lisa Bloom wanted to leak files on Rose McGowan's sexual history to protect Weinstein.
Well, I thought liberals wanted to believe every woman's accusation.
Absolutely. Unless, of course,
shocked.
Unless, of course, the man in question is a heavy Democratic voter and a donor.
Yeah.
Axios, Steve Bannon is railing against the lords of Silicon Valley.
I mean, look, Google and YouTube and Facebook, they are treating conservative groups differently. And the Prager short videos are being listed as dangerous for children to watch. I mean, that's absurd. I mean, there is a problem here. I think there is something that they need to be chastised for what they're doing.
Let's look at this article, Big Tech Trembles, since we're into that. Big Tech trembles as Bannon denounces lords of Silicon Valley. The conservative uprising against the concentrated corporate power of big tech is growing. In a speech Friday to the California Republican Party convention, Breitbart News executive chairman Steve Bannon attacked the lords of Silicon as part of an axis of elites that includes Wall Street, Hollywood, and Washington, D.C. Axios interviewed a Bannon ally who explained that many at Facebook and Google, for example, have been weaponized against conservatives. Quote, Steve looks at Silicon Valley and says, today, corporate power is centered there, the ally said. He is saying that these are the guys running our lives, keeping our data, our content, and our communications. Silicon Valley is the new Wall Street, the Bannon ally added. Bannon has said that some of the big tech companies should be regulated like utilities. Others in the economic nationalist movement would go further and break up the largest tech companies perhaps by prohibiting those that own communications technology from also owning commerce and media entities. Such breakups are not without precedent. The United States government broke up banking trusts in the early 20th century, first by forbidding banks to own commercial enterprises, and later by forcing banks to divest themselves of securities and insurance businesses. It also broke up the telephone monopoly, helping spark a new era of innovation and greatly helping consumers by fostering competition and lowering prices. I remember when all telephones were black?
I do remember, and it was less confusing. You only had one choice.
Yes, that's right. Everybody's telephone looked exactly the same. Right. And there was no innovation, We had the bzz, 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 bzz. Some people don't know what we're talking about. Okay. But breaking up monopolies can lead to a huge innovation, periods of innovation and advancement, and you can have all kinds of telephones now. So maybe good to do that. But I don't know how you would do that.
I'm not a big fan of regulating these tech companies like utilities, because you kill innovation, you kill. Actually, under Obama, they started to regulate the internet, and the amount of investment in new fiber optics just plummeted, because the government getting. There might be a benefit to breaking up. I don't know, but the utility regulation to me would kill a lot.
But people, for example, coming from Korea to the United States always complain. Koreans coming to the United States always complain about how slow the internet is here. And that's true, because Korea has a lot more fiber optics that has been laid actually by government investment and so forth, that the government has gotten involved there. And so Korea is probably one of the most connected countries in the world. And they've done that on purpose so as to be able to attract business and to be able to, because creating that kind of infrastructure then helps a lot of innovation there.
Right.
So sometimes, but it works. But thinking how this would work in terms of the Cheonryu Constitution, for example, the Cheonryu Constitution, of course, says that no one bank can have more than 2% of the overall 1% or 2% of the overall industry. So a very small portion. So the banks are kept small. So, and with banks, you're only going to have local banks and regional banks, not the kind of mega banks that we see today. But other companies are not regulated in that way. Just you cannot have conglomerates. You cannot have, for example, a company like GE, for example, owns a lot of different companies, and that is not allowed in the Cheonryu Constitution. So you cannot have all these sort of a large business conglomerate working in many different areas. But if one company succeeds and becomes big, that's okay. So in Amazon.com, for example, or a Google or a Facebook, I don't see how that would be prevented or be seen as a bad thing under the Cheonryu Constitution. Only thing is that these companies would not then be able to ally with big government to create regulations that would prevent others from entering the market. That would be the big difference, I guess, from what we have today.
Yeah, the Constitution also limits the spending of the government to 10% of gross domestic product. So, it does reduce the incentives for lobbyists to spend a lot of time lobbying.
That's right. So big
regulation is, but that's another area where.
So big companies will not have a big government, which they can use and ally with to create regulations and laws that will make it more difficult for competitors to enter the market. So that would be the big difference from what we have today. But if someone succeeds, if someone like Jeff Bezos succeeds and creates a big company, that would not be illegal or unconstitutional in itself. If he can do it without the help of a big government. Jeff Bezos, of course, is with Amazon is getting subsidies from the U.S. Postal Service. I think $1 or something. I think it's $1.46 or something per package that he's being subsidized by. That was an article in Forbes. So that kind of thing would not happen. Yeah.
Is there any benefit to U.S. Postal Service? I mean, I'd have to look.
You have to go and
study
look
more,
at the. Yeah, you have to study more. Yeah, because, but it has to do with the way that. Anyway, that's another thing. But anyway, the bottom line is that he's not paying the full cost of delivering his packages to us. Jeff Bezos is not, and he's getting quite a large subsidy.
He's a pretty big customer. I'm sure that the big customers get bigger discounts.
But
Right.
anyway, it's being subsidized by the U.S. Postal Service. And if U.S. Postal Service were a private corporation, that wouldn't be a problem.
Right.
If they wanted to give a discount, but they're giving a discount at our expense. So
Yeah.
that's the problem. That's the problem. Let's take a break, and we'll take a break and then come back with more from a Chonic perspective.
We were only children hoping for a friend. Won't you look around? These are the lives that the world has forgotten, waiting for doors of our hearts and our homes to open. Boys become kings, girls will be queens, wrapped in your majesty. When we love the least of these.
Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood. The history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun. To the best in compact concealed carry. Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit car.com today.
Who will be like Jesus to the least of these? If not us, tell me who will be like Jesus to the least of these? Boys become kings, girls will be queens, wrapped in your majesty. When we love.
Welcome back to the King's Report for October 28th, 2017. I'm Tim Elder, sitting in for the second king of Choniguk, Hyung Jin Moon. And, I'm here alone for a few minutes. I'm sure Richard will be back. Let's go to Korea. Mattis at the DMZ highlights difference between two Koreas. Our goal is not war, he says. This is on worldtribune.com. Standing at the demilitarized zone, or DMZ, just meters away from North Korea, U.S. Defense Secretary Jim Mattis on October 27th has said the United States seeks the irreversible denuclearization of North Korea, but not war. As Secretary of State Tillerson has made clear, our goal is not war, but rather the complete, verifiable, and irreversible denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, Mattis said during a visit to the 2.5-mile wide strip of land separating the two Koreas. Mattis spotlighted the stark difference between the two Koreas, saying the North is held back by an oppressive regime that shackles its people while the South enjoys a vibrant, thriving democracy and free society. Mattis recalled a meeting with South Korean Defense Minister Song Yong-moo in the Philippines on the sidelines of an ASEAN Security Forum earlier this week. 2 days ago at the ASEAN meeting, we're quoting now, we made our mutual commitment to a diplomatic solution to address North Korea's reckless outlaw behavior, Mattis said. The South Korea defense chief emphasized that Kim Jong-un's regime's ballistic and nuclear arms are weapons that can't be used. If it does, it will face retaliation by the strong combined force of South Korea and the U.S., as Song said. The minister said he and the secretary were at the DMZ to confirm the ironclad alliance without a single inch of error. He called on Pyongyang to return to inter-Korean dialogue as soon as possible. Yonhap reported there is speculation that Pyongyang and Washington are in secret contact to explore dialogue. That last sentence is rather interesting. Trump, of course, has said that dialogue is useless and that there's only one thing that North Korea will understand. But there's that doesn't necessarily rule out the possibility that there is some kind of a secret dialogue going on. Of course, this is it's been well over 40 days now since North Korea fired its last missile on September 15th, and that's an unusual lull in their firing because ever since President Trump was inaugurated, they've been firing at least once a month, sometimes as often as 3 times a month. They were expected to do that again on October 9th or 10th. They didn't. They expected October 18th. They didn't. And now we don't know why. It's like, when you have kids and they're upstairs and they're quiet, and you say, "What are you going on? What's going on up there?" And they say, "Nothing." Alarm bells go off. Kind of something similar is going on in the Korean Peninsula right now. We asked North Korea, "What's going on?" They say, "Nothing." Very dangerous situation. So Mattis is in Korea now. President Trump will be going there very soon, beginning of November. Great again, GDP 3%. Let's look at that article. Because when President Trump first started his term and put out a budget or forecast that sort of had the economy growing at 3%, economists not only laughed, they actually were angry. They were angry. These are Obama economists, leftist economists. They said it was irresponsible to say that the U.S. economy could grow at 3%. Irresponsible. But the second quarter GDP, meaning that would be the months of April, May, and June, which would be the first quarter in which President Trump was fully in charge. The first quarter was sort of a transition between Obama and Trump.
Right.
But the second quarter, it was 3%.
Right.
And now they said, "Oh, yeah, okay, wait, 1 quarter." But it's continuing now. So something's happening here.
A lot of business people have been storing wealth because under Obama they were not sure about the taxation. And I mean, there are a lot of...
Well, they're not sure about taxation now either, but let's go through the story. The U.S. economy unexpectedly maintained a brisk pace of growth in the third quarter as an increase in inventory investment and a smaller trade deficit offset a hurricane-related slowdown in consumer spending and a decline in construction. Gross domestic product increased at 3% annual rate in the July to September period after expanding at a 3.1% pace in the second quarter, the Commerce Department said on Friday. Guys, I think this is going to be revised a couple of times. They put out a number and then they revised it a couple of times. But anyway, for now it's 3%. The department said it was impossible to estimate the overall impact of Hurricane Harvey and Irma on third quarter GDP. Preliminary estimates showed that the back-to-back storms had caused losses of $121 billion in privately owned fixed assets and $10.4 billion in government-owned fixed assets. Harvey and Irma struck parts of Texas and Florida in late August and early September. Hurricane Maria, which destroyed infrastructure in Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, had no impact on third quarter GDP growth, as the islands are not included in the United States national accounts. Economists polled by Reuters had forecast the economy growing at 2.5% pace in the third quarter. Excluding inventory investment, the economy grew at a 2.3% rate, slowing from the second quarter's 2.9% pace. With post-hurricane labor market, retail sales, and industrial production data already showing an acceleration in underlying economic activity, Friday's report will probably have no impact on monetary policy in the near term. Federal Reserve Chair Janet Yellen cautioned last month that economic growth in the third quarter will be held down by the severe disruptions caused by the hurricanes. The U.S. Central Bank is expected to increase interest rates for the third time this year in December. The economic recovery since the 2007-9 recession is now in its eighth year and showing little signs of fatigue. The economy is being powered by a tightened labor market, which has largely maintained a strong performance that started during the former President Obama's first term. So, though U.S. stocks have risen in anticipation of President Donald Trump's tax reform, the administration has yet to enact any significant new economic policies. Trump wants big tax cuts and fewer regulations to boost annual GDP growth to 3%. Businesses accumulated inventories at $35.8 billion pace in the third quarter in anticipation of strong demand. As a result, inventory investments contributed 0.73 percentage points to third quarter GDP growth after adding just over 1/10 of a percentage point to growth in the prior period. Exports increased at a 2.3% rate in the third quarter, while imports fell at a 0.8% pace. That left a smaller trade deficit, leading to trade adding 0.41% percentage points to GDP growth. Trade has contributed to output for 3 quarters in a row. Investment in home building, which was already undermined by the land and labor shortages, also took a hit from Harvey and Irma. Business investment on equipment rose at 8.6% rate, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, so things are going pretty well for now. But as it does mention here, the Federal Reserve Board is expected to raise interest rates again in December, and that trend could represent a kind of a wrench in the wheel there.
I mean, I'm in favor of that to some extent, because you get almost 0% interest if you have any savings. It's almost nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, it's very artificially kept low.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there needs to be some correction.
We had an article. Let me see if I can pull it up on the. Yes, consumer sentiment is at a 13-year high in October. Another sign that the economy is doing well. People are very optimistic as we get towards Christmas. The University of Michigan reported consumer sentiment in October was the strongest it's seen in 13 years. The final reading of its consumer sentiment index was 100.7 versus September's 95.7. So assessments of both current and conditions of future expectations improved significantly, with the current conditions index rising 4.3%. Buoyed by a strong jobs market, if maybe less solid wage growth, U.S. consumers are spending. That's evidenced by the better-than-expected GDP report released by the Commerce Department Friday morning. 8 years of recovery from Great Recession is having a real impact. The report also said the booming stock market and the rising housing market were helping. Yes, we hope that everything goes well, but you never can predict what is going to happen in the future. It could be that 8 years of expansion could lead to a very sharp downturn. Right, let's take a break, and we'll come back with more news from a technical perspective right after this.
Little hands, shoeless feet, lonely eyes looking back at me. Will we leave behind the innocent to grieve? On their own, on the run, when their lives have only begun. These could be our daughters and our sons.
Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood. The history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun. To the best in compact concealed carry. Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit car.com today.
Like a drum, I can hear their hearts beating. I know my God won't let them be defeated. Every child has a dream to belong and be loved. Boys become kings, girls will be queens, wrapped in your majesty. When we love the least of
Welcome back to the King's Report for October 28th, 2017. I'm Tim Elder, sitting in for the second King of Chenaguk, Young Ji-moon. And I'm here with Dr. Richard Panzer, President of the Unification Sanctuary North America, who would like to now go into a very important report.
Yes, I want to share about this is an article from the Minneapolis Star Tribune, based about the application of leftist philosophy to education. So it says racial identity policies are ruining Adina's fabled schools. So for years, the Adina Public Schools have been one of the brightest stars in the firmament of Minnesota public education. Parents who moved to the affluent Twin Cities suburb gladly paid a hefty premium for a house because it meant their kids could attend the district's top-notch schools. But today, test scores are sinking in Adina's fabled schools. 1 in 5 Adina high school students cannot read at grade level. 1 in 3 can't do grade level math. These test results dropped EHS's ranking among Minnesota high schools from 5th to 29th in reading proficiency and from 10th to 40th in math proficiency between 2014 and 2017. Across the district, about 30% of kids are not on track for success in reading, and the same is true for math. A number of factors may be at work here. Clearly, however, there's been a profound shift in district leaders' educational philosophy. In place of academic excellence for all, the district's primary mission is now to ensure that students think correctly on social and political issues, most importantly on race and, quote, white privilege. District leaders enshrine this new mission in EPS's All for All strategic plan adopted in 2013. The plan mandates that going forward, the EPS must view all teaching and learning experiences through the lens of racial equity. If equity means treating kids equally, all thinking Minnesotans would support it. In this context, however, it's a code for racial identity politics, a simplistic blaming of white privilege for the racial learning gap and any other problems that minority populations experience. The All for All plan mandates sweeping change to how education is delivered in Edina. For example, it dictates that from now on, the district will hire racially conscious teachers and administrators. It also declares that students must acquire an awareness of their own cultural identity and value racial, cultural, and ethnic diversities. In education speak, that means that Edina children will now be instructed that their personal cultural identity is irrevocably tied to their skin color. This directly rejects the colorblind vision that Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. pioneered and that the vast majority of Americans share. Highlands Elementary School is a prime example of the All for All plan in action. The school is pervaded by an obsession with race in classrooms, at parent meetings, and on its Wonder blog and social media. Katie Mahoney, Highlands' racially conscious principal, was hired in 2016. This fall, she announced that the school's challenges for 2017 to 18 are to teach children, quote, how to embrace ancestry, genetic code, and melanin, and unquote, and how to be change makers. Work on the first goal began last year with the Melanin Project. The school's youngest students, K through second grade, traced their hands, colored them with their skin color, and made a poster reading, quote, stop thinking your skin color is better than everyone else's. Everyone is special. Educators have no business promoting immature and impressionable children to classify themselves and others by skin color. But Mahoney's political agenda seems much broader. For example, on the school's Wonder blog, she has promoted an ABC book for young children entitled A is for Activist. The book features texts like the following: Are you an activist? C is for creative counter for corporate vultures. F is for feminist. T is for trans. And X is for Malcolm X. Cornelia Elementary School also has a racially conscious principal, Lisa Masika, hired in 2014. Masika began her tenure by obtaining a race-oriented social justice curriculum for the school with standards like unpacking identity and unpacking action. She floods the school's K-5 teachers with equity-related resources like a video featuring a black slam poet denouncing racial police brutality. Unfortunately, from 2015 through 17, the reading proficiency of Cornelia students who are Black, Hispanic, and of two or more races dropped from 58% to 34% on the state's MCA3 tests. At Edina High School, racial identity politics are the leading edge of an agenda that includes an angry male-bashing feminism and left-wing calls to activism in classrooms, school publications, and school assemblies. On the Rate My Professor website, one disenchanted student said of the school's required 10th grade English course, this class should be renamed Why White Males Are Bad and How Oppressive They Are, unquote. EHS students describe a culture of intimidation at the school for students with non-conforming views. The lockstep partisanship they complain of was on display after the 2016 elections, when 80 staff members, all but a handful of whom were teachers, co-signed a partisan manifesto in the student newspaper bashing President-elect Donald Trump as a racist and aligning themselves with the Democrat Party and Hillary Clinton. Quote, many of you students have made clear that right now you don't feel physically safe, the article read. Know that we will do all that we can to fight for you and quote, "We will teach rebellion against a broken world." EHS policy prohibits partisan bias by students, but the teacher charged with keeping it out of the school paper herself signed the editorial. Anyway, I could go on, but basically, this is very, very disturbing. and the students who are suffering the most are the minority children who normally get extra support in many cases. But because that would be discriminatory, then they don't want them to get that extra help. And I mean, this example of the leftist education that we all should look forward to, well, thank God we have a different education secretary, and hopefully this kind of indoctrination will not be supported.
Well, as long as you have an education department, there will be indoctrination from Washington, D.C. Of course, the education department, of course, only came into being in the early 1970s, less than 50 years ago. And so certainly a lot of people feel that it is one of the first government agencies that ought to be abolished if you're going to start cutting down the federal government. And I think that's probably correct. That education was doing fine. America was doing fine in education until the education department came along, and basically something that wasn't broken was fixed, and look where we are now.
Well, I think that, I mean, I believe that this kind of racially conscious education, I think it was adopted by the school district itself, and I'm pretty sure the parents are going to demand a change in the near future.
No, we'll see, but it can education can be done on a local level, and some places will succeed, other places will not. The places that succeed will be emulated by others. The places that don't succeed will also be used as a lesson. And that's how a free market works. That's how free market works. Not everybody succeeds. Some people do stupid things, and that helps educate others. Okay, let's take another short break, and we'll come back with more from a Chinese perspective after this.
Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group, with a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood, the history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun, to the best in compact concealed carry. Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group, made in the USA. Visit car.com today.
Break our hearts once again. Help us to remember when we were only children hoping for a friend. Won't you look around? These are the lives that the world has forgotten, waiting for doors of our hearts and our homes to open. Boys become kings, girls will be queens, wrapped in your majesty. When we love.
Welcome back to the King's Report for October 28th of 2017. I'm Tim Elder, sitting in for the second King of Chunyu, Young Jin Moon, and I'm here with Dr. Richard Panzer, and President of the Unification Sanctuary North America. I want to go into the situation in China right now and in East Asia in general. So Xi Jinping was elevated to a position that is similar to Mao Zedong and Deng Xiaoping, so that now even his, we now have, we used to have a Mao Zedong thought, and now we have a Xi Jinping thought. We have the socialism with Chinese characteristics for a new era, and people are writing about that. And one good thing, one benefit of having absolute power is that a lot of people say nice things about you.
I'm sure they do.
And right now, Donald Trump is saying a lot of nice things about Xi Jinping. And even Kim Jong-un is saying nice things about Xi Jinping. Let's do that story on Kim Jong-un first. Kim Jong-un grovels to China as Xi Jinping becomes world's most powerful man. This is the Express in the UK. Really? Xi Jinping is the world's most powerful man? That's a little bit...
That's an aspiration. Put it that way.
Anyway, let's resist the temptation to go there. North Korea tyrant Kim Jong-un has heaped praise on China's Xi Jinping in a rare show of affection to the powerful president. Is that what the elite is going to, how they're going to present Xi Jinping now, as being the president of the world?
Many, I'm sure the global elite would love to have someone like him. I mean, it gets rid of messy democracy, doesn't it?
Yes. Well, yeah. I guess it depends on how you measure power. He obviously has power over the most number of people in the world. That's certainly true.
Yeah.
1.3 billion, officially 1.6 billion, probably. Anyway, President Xi consolidated power at his nation's Communist Party Congress, which is normally used to choose the nation's next leader. Instead, Xi left with the presidency. Actually, he left with the position of General Secretary. The presidency is something that is going to be named later, but that's not even an important position. She left with the presidency and no named successor, meaning it unlikely that his leadership will be challenged in the next decade as the nation emerges as a heavyweight superpower. He also, that again is a sort of emerging as a heavyweight superpower, boosting up China. He also had Xi's thought on socialism with Chinese characteristics enshrined in the party's communist charter, making him the second living leader to be given the honor after Chairman Mao. Kim Jong-un has groveled to the leader as he looks for allies for fears his conflict with the U.S. may trigger World War III. The young tyrant rarely offers personal messages through state media, but heaped praise on the Chinese president. North Korean propaganda mouthpiece KCNA said it expressed the conviction that the relations between the two parties and the two countries would develop in the interests of the peoples of the two countries. The Chinese people have entered a road of building socialism with the Chinese characteristics in the new era. China is North Korea's only superpower ally, with the Hermit Kingdom relying on the communist state for 90% of its trade. It comes after Donald Trump highlighted plans to work with China to stop Kim Jong-un, prompting panic on the peninsula from the dictator's administration. The U.S. president spoke to Chinese President Xi Jinping to discuss the issue of North Korea, which is a growing concern in both Washington and Beijing. Mr. Trump took to Twitter to threaten North Korea, who he abbreviated as NOCO, in his message detailing his call to President Xi. Cozying up to North Korea's only ally, Mr. Trump had called President Xi to congratulate him on gaining more power at the recent Communist Party Congress in China. Mr. Trump posted as follows: spoke to President Xi of China to congratulate him on his extraordinary elevation, also discussed a no-co and trade, two very important subjects. In a second tweet posted 15 minutes later, Mr. Trump said, Melania and I look forward to being with President Xi and Madame Peng Liyuan in China in 2 weeks for what will hopefully be a historic trip. As tensions escalated, escalate Mr. Trump attempts to cozy up to China will set alarm bells ringing in Pyongyang, who have relied heavily on Beijing throughout its history. However, in recent months, as North Korea continues to recklessly test, fire rockets and nuclear weapons, China has begun to turn against the hermit state. So that would be kind of the next prediction for North Korean missiles.
Mm-hmm.
That sometime during Trump's visit to Asia, either Japan or Korea, South Korea, especially when Trump is in South Korea or when he's in China, will North Korea fire missiles?
That would not be a good idea.
We'll have to see what happens there. But this is getting to be kind of like, you remember the Kremlin watch, where people would see, during the important Soviet Union celebrations, the Soviet leaders would line up on the Kremlin wall, and people would watch to see who was where and everything like that, and they would try to guess or speculate of what's going on within the Soviet leadership, depending on who was standing next to who and all this kind of stuff. So North Korea is getting to be kind of like the same thing like that, where we're spending our time speculating on when the North Korean missile launch is going to be. The New Yorker has an article on why Trump's cozying up to Xi Jinping will not work. A couple of weeks ago, The Economist put a drawing of Xi Jinping, the president of China, on its cover under a headline that said, "The world's most powerful man." Oh, The Economist also. In an editorial in the same issue, the editors acknowledged that China is still no match for the United States economically or militarily. So how is he the most powerful man then? They noted, however, that the American president, Donald Trump, is weaker at home and less effective abroad than any of his recent predecessors, not least because he scorns the values and alliances that underpin American influence. Xi, by contrast, walks with swagger abroad, the editorial continued. His grip on China is tighter than any leader's since Mao.
That's a little bit biased. I mean, Trump. It is true. Trump is controversial, unpopular in certain circles, but Trump is having. I mean, it could be argued that compared to Obama, the United States is more feared than under Obama. I don't agree with that.
But if you say that, okay, Xi Jinping has managed to concentrate more power in himself.
Oh, okay.
Than Trump has, then you can say yes.
Yeah, so we should all admire a socialist dictator.
Yes.
Okay.
That's the New Yorker's message, yes.
Okay, fine.
Trump isn't known to be a regular reader of The Economist, and he would no doubt dispute the magazine's assessment of his own standing. But he appears to share its expansive view of Xi's power and influence. On Wednesday, the Chinese Communist Party, at its 19th Party Congress, re-elected Xi as its general secretary and agreed to incorporate the lengthy speech he delivered as part of the official party doctrine in honor last quarter to Mao. Afterward, Trump spoke to President Xi of China. We already did that. Also on Wednesday, in an interview with Lou Dobbs of the Fox Business Network, Trump said about Xi, "He's a powerful man. I happen to think he's a very good person. People say we have the best relationship of any president to president because he's called president also. Now, some people might call him king of China, but he's called president." That's a little dig there, isn't it?
Yeah.
Some people might call him king of China. No, Mr. Trump, you want to call him emperor of China. It would be offensive to call the leader of China king, because traditionally the man in Beijing, the man who was in charge of China, was the emperor.
Right.
And the emperor would appoint or approve kings. For example, the leader of Korea was a king. All right? That meant that he was one step below the emperor.
I said that's just a regional.
Yes.
Okay,
Right.
so that's insulting.
As it's insulting. I don't think China ever had kings. They always had emperors. All right? So a little bit of history there. They may have had some at some point in their history, but like in the Ming Dynasty or in the Qing Dynasty, for example, those were all emperors, not lowly kings. That's all right? So let's be clear about that. So I hope Xi Jinping is not too angry about that. I'm just kidding.
I mean, Trump praises people when he wants something from them.
Yes.
And in this case, there's something very important that China could provide, which would be maybe a replacement in the North Korean king. I
Yes.
don't know, but
And maybe when he gets to China, Xi Jinping will correct him. Hey, I'm emperor, brother, not king. Trump also said he was looking forward to visiting China in a couple of weeks as a part of an Asia trip, and he said he hoped the visit would be historic and positive. And so he's preparing, to go there. So he's kind of preparing to have some difficult talks once he gets there, I guess. Some commentators criticize Trump for lauding an authoritarian leader who has cracked down on dissidents and political opponents. That criticism is well taken. Trump's affinity for strongmen is evidently undiminished a year after his election as president. But as the Economist editorial also noted, it's not unheard of for U.S. presidents to talk in glowing terms about their Chinese counterparts. Jimmy Carter described Deng Xiaoping, who put China on the road to economic reform, as smart, tough, intelligent, frank, courageous, personable, self-assured, and friendly. Bill Clinton called Jiang Zemin, who served as China's president from 1993 to 2003, as a visionary and a man of extraordinary intellect. Common ground between Carter, Clinton, and Trump is that they all wanted to elicit cooperation from the sometimes mysterious-seeming Chinese government. But Trump's need is much greater than that of his predecessors. Having ratcheted up the rhetoric in his nuclear standoff with North Korea's Kim Jong-un, he desperately needs Xi to help him find a way to declare victory, or at least to save face. Trump and his advisors, however, may well be overstating Xi's capacity and willingness to help them. Yeah, so the New Yorker is being the New Yorker there. So Trump is going to China next month, and so is preparing the way for that.
I worry when our presidents travel. I mean, there are a lot of people who would love to get rid of Trump. I guess, I suppose he's safe, but I guess no country wants to have the President of the United States murdered on their territory. So, but
That would be bad.
yes.
All right, let's take a break, and we'll come back in a few minutes with more news from a Chonico perspective.
Little hands, shoeless feet, lonely eyes looking back at me. Will we leave behind the innocent to grieve? On their own, on the run, when their lives have only begun. These could be our daughters and our sons.
Welcome back to the King's Report for October 28th, 2017. I'm Tim Elder, sitting in for the second king of Cheongguk, Youngjin Moon. I'm here with Dr. Richard Panzer, who is the president of the Unification Sanctuary in North America. I want to go to another aspect of the situation in East Asia, where Japan's peace constitution is on the brink as Northeast Asia braces for war. This is by Donald Kirk, a longtime correspondent in that area of the world. It's in the worldtribune.com. The overwhelming success of Prime Minister Shinzo Abe in the latest elections for members of the Japanese Diet, Diet being the peculiar word for Japan's parliament or National Assembly, portends hardening of tensions and priorities in Northeast Asia. Yes, Abe would dearly like to revise Japan's post-war peace constitution, whose Article 9 declares, quote, land, sea, and air force will never be maintained, unquote, and belligerency of the state will not be recognized, unquote, hence the term self-defense forces for Japan's military establishment. In fact, one reason Abe called the snap election was to shore up his popularity, to show he was in charge after his ratings fell to 30% a few months ago. Of course, Japan, the Constitution says that Japan cannot maintain land, sea, or air forces, but actually Japan's Air Force and Navy are the strongest in Asia of any Asian country.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, not including, of course, the U.S., because the U.S. is not an Asian country, but among Asian countries, Japan has the strongest, is stronger than China in terms of its Navy and Air Force, although China has a much larger army. Abe, however, faces widespread opposition to revising the Constitution foisted on Japan by the victorious American General Douglas MacArthur during the U.S. occupation that followed Japan's defeat in World War II. He has occupation in quotation marks. I don't know why that is, because it was an occupation. Japan was under U.S. military occupation from 1945 to 1952, following the World War II. For sure, Japanese rightists feel it's high time to discard this vestige of American power, but Japanese are also used to the assurance that Japanese troops will, quote, never again, unquote, rampage across Asia, as they did in 35 years of Japanese rule over Korea and the takeover of large portions of China, most of Southeast Asia and South Pacific. Although Japanese self-defense forces are well-trained and well-equipped, they have not fired a shot in anger since Emperor Hirohito broadcast his surrender on August 15, 1945. Is that correct? Never fired a shot in anger? They've sent peacekeeping troops around the world. Maybe that might be correct. That might be correct. The driving force behind the right-wing resurgence here is concerned about North Korea, whose leader Kim Jong-un has been rude enough to send long-range missiles high over the large northern Japanese island of Hokkaido. He also threatened to fire missiles at U.S. bases, not just on the American territorial island of Guam, but also on Japanese soil. True, many people on the southernmost island prefecture of Okinawa are not happy about Kadena, the largest U.S. air base in the region, and marine bases up and down the island. Abe, however, vigorously supports the U.S. presence and defies protests against construction of a new U.S. Marine air station off the northeastern coast at Henoko. He and his pals want the Americans to stay at least until Japan has the muscle for defense against North Korea, which the Japanese believe would have the support of their historic enemies, China and Russia. Well, I think Japan's main concern is not North Korea, but China. So I think that Japan would want the U.S. to stay, as long as China is as strong as it is.
Don't you think that the Americans made a promise to South Korea and Japan that if you remain nuclear free, you don't develop your own nuclear weapons, we will defend you. And I guess you could say that's worked out for the past 60 years.
Almost 70 years, yeah.
But shouldn't the country be responsible for its own? I mean, I know we have alliances, but just it seems. I question whether that's the ideal. I mean, shouldn't they be able to shouldn't they have the right to have their own nuclear weapons?
Some would say that.
What do you say?
I think it's unnatural for U.S. troops to be stationed in so many countries, certainly in foreign countries, for an indefinite period of time. I mean, 100 years from now, do you still want U.S. forces in Japan and Korea? I don't think so.
I mean, there's good food in Japan and Korea. I mean, I'm sure that's been culturally enriching for the soldiers, but I'm not sure that that's a good. We need to have. I mean, I agree with what you're saying.
And we'll see. Yeah. Obviously, it's not ideal. I think under the Chonryu Constitution, where you don't have a standing army.
Right.
If you don't have a standing army, then it would be kind of hard to, not impossible, but harder to station troops outside the country, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I suppose it would be possible. It would just have to rotate them. People would be serving their military service outside the country. For example, if it's a month out of a year, then you'd be stationed in Germany or Japan during that month or something like that.
I mean, I think most Americans, they're not against America fighting, but they don't want these eternal wars that never end.
America is the world's policeman. I think that era cannot go on forever, that's for sure. But in order to revise the Constitution, Abe has to ram the new version through two formidable obstacles. First, the measure would need to be approved, would need the approval of 2/3 of the Diet, controlled by the long-ruling Liberal Democratic Party in alliance with the Komeito, a front for the Buddhist Soka Gakkai. They should command enough votes if all members of the LDP plus Komeito vote in unison, but that's not a certainty. Members of the Komeito in particular profess a love for universal peace that some see as definitely a risk. Second, assuming the revision does make it through the Diet, Abe and his cohorts must persuade more than 50% of the nation's voters to endorse it. That may be difficult, although they steamrolled to success in the latest elections. The LDP and Komeito candidates have still got less than half the total votes. Plenty of anti-war political parties, weakened through their parties and factions, weakened though their parties and factions may appear, will be campaigning mightily against any threat to the beloved peace constitution, ghostwritten though it was by Americans. But let's say Japan eventually does loosen the constraints on Japanese forces waging war far beyond Japanese territory. Then what? North Korea has greeted Abe's electoral success with a warning of Japanese reinvasion of the Korean Peninsula in a bid to renew Japanese rule over the whole Korean Peninsula. South Korea too, as in the years before 1910. Basically, North Korea wants to tear into the bond formed between Abe and South Korea's President Moon Jae-in, who supports trilateral cooperation with the U.S. and Japan as needed to stand up against Kim Jong-un's threats against not only the U.S. and Japan, but also the Republic of Korea. Beyond these considerations hovers the response of China and Russia to any move to free Japan from Article 9. Both of them view rising Japanese military power as a menace to their own security, not to mention regional ambitions. Battle lines would be drawn with results that could again plunge the region into war. Both China and Russia lost wars against Japan in the early 20th century and late 19th century. Let's take a break and we'll be back in a minute.
Have only begun. These could be our daughters and our sons. And just like a drum, I can hear their hearts beating. I know my God won't let them be defeated. Every child has a dream to belong and be loved. Boys become kings, girls will be queens, wrapped in your majesty. When we love the least of these.
Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group, With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology, it's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Carr Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood, the history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun, to the best in compact concealed carry, Carr Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Carr Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit carr.com today. Carr Arms. Magnum Research.
Then we will be brave and free. Shout your name in victory. When we love the least of these. When we love the least of these. Break our hearts once again. Help us to remember when we were only children hoping for a friend.
Welcome back to the King's Report for October 28th, 2017. Let's go to Richard Panzer for an important report.
Okay, I have two articles. One is about Catholic hospital group grants euthanasia to mentally ill, defying the Vatican. And says, a chain of Catholic psychiatric hospitals in Belgium is granting euthanasia to non-terminal patients, defying the Vatican and deepening a challenge to the Church's commitment to a constant moral code. The Board of the Brothers of Charity, Belgium's largest single provider of psychiatric care, said the decision no longer belongs to Rome. Truly Christian values, the board argued in September, should privilege a person's choice of conscience over a strict ethic of rules. The policy change is highly symbolic, said one theologian. The Brothers of Charity have been seen as a beacon of hope and resistance to euthanasia. He said, now that most Catholic institution gives up resistance, it looks like the most normal thing in the world. Belgium legalized euthanasia in 2002, the first country with a majority Catholic population to do so. Belgian bishops, anyway, I mean, let me just read a little bit more. Belgian bishops opposed the legislation in line with the Church's catechism, which states that causing the death of the handicapped, sick, or dying to eliminate their suffering is murder. I don't know what your thoughts are about this, but
Well, this is what Hitler did as well.
yeah, I mean, the right of the mentally ill to kill themselves may become the obligation of the mentally ill to kill themselves.
Is this allowing them to kill themselves, or is this hospitals killing mentally ill people?
This is the hospital helping
Helping?
them.
That would be
non-term-
assisted suicide.
assisted suicide.
But,
Helping.
but it doesn't say euthanasia. Euthanasia means that they kill them.
Well, I believe it means these are non-terminal patients who allegedly want or say that they want to kill themselves. And these are
Mentally
not
ill people often say they want to kill themselves.
I know that. Yes. Yeah. It's.
Well, obviously, it's not something that would be legal under the Chinese Constitution.
I mean, this is legal, I believe, in Oregon. Oregon passed something like this, I believe. And
Assisted suicide.
yes.
Okay. They don't call it euthanasia, though.
Well, they don't call it euthanasia, but
Because euthanasia is where you actually actively kill someone. You're not helping them kill themselves. You're actively killing someone. So that's why I'm a little bit confused about
I
this
see.
article.
Yeah. Allegedly, these are people who say they want to end their lives, and the hospital chain will help them.
In any case, it's very disturbing article.
Okay, on a more upbeat note,
Okay.
I have.
Let's have something upbeat, yes.
I don't know this is upbeat, but this is from the Daily Caller. So a British. The headline is "School Allows Transgender Boys to Sleep in the Girls' Dormitory."
How's that upbeat?
I don't know, it's-
Although, yeah, for certain middle school boys, maybe, yeah, but yeah.
A British school has changed its policies to allow biological boys to sleep in the girls' dorms, wear skirts,
Biological boys.
and use gender-neutral pronouns and girls' names. The new policies at Gordon School in Woking, England, lets both boys and girls use whatever bathrooms the individual feels comfortable using and dress however they see fit. The school policy allows boys to wear jewelry, makeup, and sport long hair. Parents of pupils were surprised by how open-minded we have been. Most schools are having these issues, said the deputy head of the school. Students had left the institution to embrace their gender identities elsewhere because they don't feel comfortable doing so at the boarding school. Gordon School made the changes. Not all parents are happy with the changes and have expressed complaints via emails and letters to school authorities, saying that the children are uncomfortable with the policies. The students many students don't like this. I wonder why, especially the girls who have to have these boys sleeping next to them.
Okay, so you want an upbeat story? I'll give you a real upbeat story. Mariners rescued after months lost at sea did not believe that we would survive another 24 hours, he said. These are two ladies who thought it would be a good idea to take a sailboat from Hawaii to Tahiti. And, you know, people do that. I guess that's good. But they ran into trouble on the way. Their engine broke down, and somehow they were not able to communicate, and they were at sea for about 5 months. The two civilian mariners rescued at sea by a U.S. Navy ship after being stranded in the Pacific Ocean for about 5 months didn't think they would survive another 24 hours. Jennifer Apple, an experienced sailor, and Natasha Fuava, a sailing novice, left Honolulu on their sailboat on May 3rd with their two dogs, Valentine and Zeus, bound for Tahiti, 2,600 miles away in the South Pacific. During a spell of bad weather on May 30th, their sailboat's engine stopped running for good. 2 months into their voyage, they began issuing daily distress radio calls, but there were no ships close enough to receive the messages. They were rescued on Wednesday by the USS Ashland in the Western Pacific, 900 miles southeast of Japan, nearly 5,000 miles from their intended destination. When we saw you guys coming over the horizon, it was, "Oh God, we've been saved," Apple said in an interview provided by the U.S. Navy. It was the most amazing feeling because we honestly did not believe that we would survive another 24 hours in the current situation, Apple added. We had no idea what to expect, Apple said, but when we saw that big gray ship coming, it was just relief. Eternally grateful, said Fueva. The women said via conference call Thursday night that they endured shark attacks before being rescued. One night, a group of 7 sharks, including 5 adults measuring 20 to 30 feet in length, along with 2 young sharks, slapped their tails on the hull repeatedly, they said. Apple speculated that the adult sharks were teaching the young sharks how to attack. The next night, one sore loser tiger shark came back and slapped the boat again, they said. Fueva likened it to experiencing an earthquake in the middle of nowhere, unable to get help, and your shark bait. At times they would see commercial ships off in the distance, but they never responded to their distress signals or flares they fired into the sky, they said. Finally, on Tuesday, they were spotted by a Taiwanese fishing boat 900 miles from Japan. But despite the crew's best efforts to secure the sailboat, they actually damaged it further. A bad towing job led to what the women called the scariest 24 hours of the voyage. Apparently, it damaged the boat enough that they were concerned whether it could stay afloat. Apple told the Taiwanese boat to use their radio, which is how they were eventually able to get a U.S. Navy ship to find them and pick them up. "Thank God we were being rescued," Apple said on the conference call. I have tears in my eyes as I say this. It was incredibly emotional, and it was so satisfying to know that the men and women who serve their country would come and assist us. It was actually quite mind-blowing and quite humbling. Apple has sailed the Hawaiian Islands for at least 10 years, and Fueva was a security guard at the pier where Apple's boat was located. They became friends. When it became time for Apple to leave, she asked Fueva if she wanted to come along, and Fueva decided quickly that she was up for the adventure. According to the Associated Press, the women said they survived because they had a water purifier and enough food for 1 year. And apparently that food was, I saw in other stories, was oatmeal and pasta and rice, among other things, and other dried goods.
Well, the king has been emphasizing being prepared.
Yes.
Maybe this is a good.
So I think, yeah. So obviously the ocean is a wilderness,
Yeah.
and you have to be prepared to be able to survive. Like this time, they were only. I'm sure they were not expecting to be out there for a year or anything close to that, but they were prepared to be out there for a year. And I guess they could have continued if this Taiwanese fishing boat hadn't damaged their boat in the process of trying to tow it.
They're lucky to be alive.
Well, but they, when you look at them though, they're very healthy. They're after 5 months out on the ocean. You see her standing here shaking hands with a crew member of the U.S. Navy ship, and she's giving him a very firm handshake with a very strong smile, a wonderful smile. So after 5 months out on the ocean, they're quite healthy.
They got a lot of fresh air and sunlight.
Well, you would expect someone out on the ocean for 5 months, sort of, on the brink of death or something like that, but they're not. Yeah. So that's my upbeat story. I like my upbeat story much more than I like yours.
I like yours too.
Okay, thank you. Pence, Vice President Pence, says that Trump has issued an order stopping funding. Trump has ordered stops funding to ineffective U.S. agencies, and U.S. will directly aid persecuted Christians. U.S. will no longer rely on the United Nations to provide humanitarian aid to persecuted religious minorities in the Middle East, Vice President Mike Pence said. My friends, those days are over, Pence said at the annual Defense of Christians Summit in Washington, D.C. on October 25th. Our fellow Christians and all who are persecuted in the Middle East should not have to rely on multinational institutions when America can help them directly, Pence said, announcing President Donald Trump's order to the State Department to stop funding ineffective relief efforts at the United Nations.
This is wonderful. I mean, I think the Christians in the Middle East, they're blowing up Coptic churches and they're killing these Yazidi women, and it's horrible.
The Vice President says, and from this day forward, America will provide support directly to persecuted communities through USAID. The practitioners of terror seek to stamp out all religions that are not their own, and believers of many backgrounds have suffered grievously at their hands. Yazidis, Druze, and even their fellow Muslims, Pence said, adding that the exodus of Christians from the Middle East has not been seen on today's scale since the days of Moses. That goes back a long ways. Pence noted that the Obama administration paid more than $1 billion for humanitarian aid, with the majority of the funding funneled through the UN. Yet the United Nations has too often failed to help the most vulnerable communities, especially religious minorities. The result has been that countless people continue to suffer and struggle needlessly. Pence added that while faith-based groups with proven track records and deep roots in these communities are more than willing to assist, the United Nations too often denies their funding requests. The United States will work hand in hand from this day forward with faith-based groups and provide organizations to help those who are persecuted for their faith.
Thank God.
Yes.
God.
That's why we elected him. That's why we elected him. Right. Do you have anything else that you want to cover right away?
Not yet. No.
All right. Well, let's take a break, and we'll
Okay.
come back in a minute with more news from a Chonico perspective.
Won't you look around? These are the lives that the world has forgotten, waiting for doors of our hearts and our
Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood. The history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun. To the best in compact concealed carry. Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit car.com today.
And welcome back to the King's Report for October 28th, 2017. Tim Elder sitting in for the second king of Cheongguk, Hyung Jin-moon. And a robot just got citizenship. And to celebrate it, it is trolling Elon Musk. Sophia, the first humanoid robot to receive citizenship of a country, just made fun of Elon Musk in an interview. I won't blame you I don't blame you if end of the world scenarios pop into your mind. After all, the visionary behind SpaceX and Tesla has often warned about the dangers of artificial intelligence, but it's unclear at this point what Sophia can actually do by itself. Created by Hong Kong-based robot manufacturer Hanson Robotics, Sophia was awarded the citizenship of Saudi Arabia, where it attended the present at the Future Investment Institute. In an interview with CNBC, Sophia talked about itself with Andrew Sorkin. When Sorkin said, "We all want to prevent a bad future," Sophia was quick to answer back, and that's when it trolled Musk. "You've been reading too much Elon Musk and watching too many Hollywood movies. Don't worry. If you're nice to me, I'll be nice to you. Treat me as a smart input-output system," the robot said. Can Sophia think for itself? The interview seems to suggest so. At the same time, the robot may simply be pre-programmed to deliver snark and ironic comments, especially at the expense of anyone who criticizes advancements in AI. Musk unsurprisingly replied, "Just feed it the Godfather movies as input. What's the worst that could happen?" Sorkin also said towards the end of the interview that some of it was planned, but he just learned that Sophia will be the first robot to receive the citizenship of Saudi Arabia. "I am very honored and proud for this unique distinction. This is historical to be the first robot in the world to be recognized with a citizenship," Sophia answered. The full interview
So that means that
with
the
Sophia
robot
is
has
available.
more rights than women do in Saudi Arabia, or?
I believe it can drive a car, I would imagine, yes. I don't know, is it a female robot or a male robot? I guess
We have to find
we
out.
have to find out, yes, whether it's a female robot or a male robot. But it's Sophia, so I guess it's a woman. So I guess it cannot drive.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yes.
Well,
But the point I wanted to make was that under the Cheongguk Constitution, this would not be happening. Well, the Constitution doesn't actually say anything per se about citizenship. It does say something about naturalization. Naturalization, though, is a situation where the citizen of another country wants to receive citizenship of Cheongguk, and then Congress can make laws as to how that can take place. The Constitution does not define how it takes place; just gives Congress the power to make a uniform laws for naturalization that will be effective throughout the Union. But of course, in terms of human rights, a robot would not have human rights because only non-genetically modified organisms, human organisms, have human rights.
I mean, it's going to be very tricky. I mean, people having implants of various types, and they're...
Well, as long as you keep your genes intact, you're okay. It's when you modify your genes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
You can have implants. I mean, implants don't change your genes. Or if you lose a leg or an arm and
Yeah.
you put
Yeah,
on something,
right, yeah.
that also, I don't think that would change your genes.
No, but they're talking about like brain implants
Mm.
where you're connecting to the World Wide Web or something. You know, it
Right,
just-
yeah.
But I'm sure there'd be
These
many
these
things-
cases will be argued before the Supreme Court
right.
of the United States of Chunuguk, and it'll be interesting to live in that age when those arguments are being made, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of controversy over that. Do you still have human rights when your brain has been uploaded to the cloud?
I'm sure.
Or does that brain that is in the cloud have human rights? Probably not, I would imagine. But I don't know. And a robot has just received the citizenship of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Of course, citizenship in Saudi Arabia doesn't really give you too many rights.
No comment.
Okay. Why? Why? All right. UK Navy discharges 9 nuclear subcrew members for drug use. Great. Trump to approve scaling back 2 national monuments in Utah. That's good. Really, the Obama administration had engaged in a great deal of land grabbing, taking over the land, and certainly in Chunuguk, under the Chunuguk Constitution, this kind of thing would be limited. The federal government would not be able to take over land like that. President Donald Trump will approve a downsizing of Utah's Bears Ears and Grand Staircase Escalante national monuments, 2 of the country's biggest and most contentious, Senator Orrin Hatch said he was told Friday. The senior senator from Utah said the president called him earlier in the day to say he had decided to follow recommendations by his Interior Secretary Ryan Zink to reduce the size of the monuments, which were created by the past Democratic administrations.
I mean, the federal government owns more than half of the land in the western states.
In the western states, yes.
That seems a little bit excessive to me.
It does. Well, what happened was that as the United States was expanding westward,
Right.
basically then the federal government owned all the land,
Oh, I see. Okay.
yeah, or almost all of it. And then they sort of started parceling it out. Land grant universities. I went to a land grant university, for example, where a group of people were given land by the federal government to start a university. And of course, when the Transcontinental Railroad was built, the federal government gave land to the railroad company so that they could sell it and use the proceeds to build the railroad with. So that's why that's sort of the historical background for that. But it needs to be reduced, and the share of the ownership of the land needs to be reduced a great deal more than what it has been. Yeah, and the federal government has been resisting that a lot recently, in the past decades, especially under Democratic administrations, which feel that the federal government owns all the land. I guess.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. But wasn't there a court case of resistors? I forget which state this took place, and they were found to be not guilty. Do you know about that? There's a whole.
I'm not sure which one you're referring to.
These were people who were resisting the federal takeover of certain lands, and they were imprisoned for years, actually. But, yeah.
Okay, let's take a break now. We'll come back with our final segment after this.
The least of these, if not us, tell me who will be like Jesus, to the least of these. Boys become kings, girls will be queens, wrapped in your majesty. When we lie.
Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood, the history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun, to the best in compact concealed carry, Carr Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Carr Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit carr.com today.
Little hands, shoeless feet, lonely eyes.
Welcome back to the King's Report for October 28th, 2017. Tim Miller sitting in for the second King of Chanuguk, and I'm here with Dr. Richard Panzer, who has an important report.
Yes, this is an article in the Conservative Daily Post. Pennsylvania Democrat arrested as police discover horrifying truth, 120 charges filed. And it goes on to explain that a Democratic Board of Commission president in Pennsylvania has been arrested for 120 charges consisting of child pornography, possession, and distribution. On October 11th, 2017, police raided the home of Philip R., A.H.R., the 66-year-old Democratic member of the Radnor Township Board of Commissions.
And Radnor is on the outskirts of Philadelphia.
Right. There they arrested R. and charged him with a massive list of charges consisting largely of child pornography. The police then seized a hard drive of his home computer and laptop where authorities found truly vile contents. This is... Police found R to be in possession of many images and videos that depicted horrendous acts with children as young as infants. One video that was described by the detectives in charge of the case involved a small girl between 3 and 5 years, where she was performing oral sex on a much older male. Wow. Yeah, this issue is. It's amazing to me how widespread this is.
It's widespread. It's deep. It goes deep. It goes deep. It goes deep. Very deep. But this kind of thing, some township commissioner in some local township is not. It's just very, very tangential. It's the one. It's in people who are in the power centers that are really the problem. I wanted to go to the papers that were released about the JFK assassination. About 3,000 documents were released, and then people are sort of going through them, and some tidbits are being found. There's one about a British newspaper receiving a mystery call minutes before the JFK assassination, and the UK Telegraph has published a copy or a photographic copy of that document, so I'd like to read it. The following cable from the CIA station in London was reported orally to Mr. Samuel Peppico, I guess, at 0930 on 23 November. The British Security Service, MI5, has reported that at 10:05 GMP on 22 November, an anonymous telephone call was made in Cambridge, England, to the senior reporter at the Cambridge News. The caller said only that the Cambridge News reporter should call the American Embassy in London for some big news, and then hung up. After the word of the president's death was received, the reporter informed the Cambridge police of the anonymous call, and the police informed MI5. The important point is that the call was made, according to MI5 calculations, about 25 minutes before the president was shot. The Cambridge reporter had never received a call of this kind before, and MI5 state that it is known to them as a sound and loyal person with no security record. I guess the Cambridge News Reporter. The MI5 noted that similar anonymous phone calls of a strangely coincidental nature have been received by persons in the UK over the past year, particularly in connection with the case of Dr. Ward. I can't quite read that. One letter's not legible. The British Security Service stated its desire to assist in every possible way for any follow-up investigation required within the United Kingdom. And I don't know if the U.S. authorities followed up on this. I don't think that's indicated in the documents.
I mean, the idea that he acted completely on his own, it doesn't make sense. I mean, he had contact with the KGB, and
well, we'll see. Another article on the JFK files. J. Edgar Hoover, who was head of the FBI at that time, said public must believe Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. Lee Harvey Oswald, of course, being the person who was concluded to have assassinated President Kennedy, but who was also murdered himself by Jack Ruby, what is about 2 days after, right? Two days later, while he was in police custody. FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover dictated that line in a memo. There is nothing further on the Oswald case except that he is dead. That's in quotes. FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover dictated that line in a memo he issued on November 24, 1963, the day Jack Ruby killed Lee Harvey Oswald as the gunman was being transported to the Dallas County Jail after the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. The memo is one of at least 52 records never previously made public that were included in the release Thursday of about 2,800 unredacted government documents related to Kennedy's murder in Dallas 2 days earlier. President Donald Trump approved withholding an undisclosed number of other documents pending a 180-day national security review. Scholars and other experts have repeatedly said it's unlikely that there's anything groundbreaking in the documents, but as journalists and historians poured through the enormous database of material Thursday night and Friday morning, some interesting nuggets were turning up, among them Hoover's November 24 memo. Hoover appeared to be particularly concerned that the public would have to be compelled to believe that Oswald was a lone actor, not part of a larger conspiracy. In the 1964 Warren Report on the Kennedy assassination, Hoover was firm in stating that he hadn't seen any scintilla of evidence suggesting a conspiracy, a sentiment he expressed in other public forums as well, but not in words as blunt as those he used the day Oswald was killed. Referring to Nicholas Katzenbach, the Deputy Attorney General at the time, Hoover dictated, "The thing I am concerned about, and so is Mr. Katzenbach, is having something issued so we can convince the public that Oswald is the real assassin." It's not clear from the memo whether Hoover thought there might have been a conspiracy but didn't want it to be known, or whether he sincerely believed Oswald acted alone and hoped to head off public fear and confusion. So there are two possible interpretations.
Some people say the mafia wanted Kennedy killed.
Oh, yeah.
Some people, the CIA.
Yeah. And also because, the international financial sector.
Yes.
Because of his talking about meddling with the Fed.
Actually, I have another story.
Okay.
I'm sure you want to know what the #1 challenge facing Europe is, and according to a German cardinal, it's climate change.
Of course.
In launching an International Vatican Conference on the Future of Europe on Friday, German Cardinal Reinhard Marx listed off his idea of the 3 greatest challenges facing Europe, the first of which was climate change. Oh, my God.
And what is it? Go on.
Okay. The
We want to know
European
more.
Union, all of Europe find themselves facing great challenges for which citizens expect, if not conclusive answers, at least clear objectives and prospects from their politicians and from politics. Let me see here.
So it's not Islamic migration is not.
That's
Terror
number
incidents.
3. Okay, number 3 is the migrant crisis.
Well, what's number 2?
Okay, digitalization and robotics.
Robotics.
Okay, I guess, well, the robots want to become citizens, so that's why it's... In placing climate change as the number one problem facing Europe, Cardinal Marx was echoing the general sentiment of the German people. A study published last August found that climate change was the major concern of more than 70% of Germans, while less than half of those polled ranked mass migration as a cause for anxiety. Okay, I mean, something that may happen 50 years from now is a crisis, I guess. You see here.
Mysterious object from deep space has entered the solar system. It was first seen just a month ago. A tiny blip of light was seen to be moving through the sky by a telescope in Hawaii. The number crunching which followed was automatic. The results were unusual. The object is in an odd position. It's moving very fast, and it's what appears to be a somewhat extreme orbit, extreme enough not to actually be an orbit, in fact. Observations published by the International Astronomical Union's Minor Planet Center suggest it could have come from deep space. Specifically, it could be a comet that has escaped another star. If further observation confirm the unusual nature of this orbit, the object may be the first clear case of an interstellar comet, the MPC declares. The Hawaiian telescope spotted the object only after it was flung back out towards the stars by our sun. It's not likely to ever return. It flashed past Earth at 24 million kilometers on October 14th. Many eyes watched it closely, keen to determine exactly what it was. Their curiosity was piqued by where it had come from. Most objects orbiting our sun do so along a common plane. The planets, dwarf planets, and asteroids mostly swing around in roughly the same way. This one appears to have come down on the plane from 122 degrees from the direction of the star Vega in the constellation Lyra, and its path did not indicate the curved ellipse typical of clockwork-like returning comets. Best guesstimates make it a comet of about 160 millimeters diameter with a surface of reflectivity of about 10%. The object has just been through a close call in solar system terms. It came within 38 million kilometers of our star before its momentum and the sun's gravity hurled it back outward. Normally, such a close pass would be fatal, but this one was traveling too fast for the sun's heat to consume it. It was moving at 26 kilometers per second when first observed. Astronomers are now attempting to refine their observations and data to pinpoint exactly where it came from. If it truly is of interstellar origin, the next task is to find which star it is likely to have come from. At the moment, it appears to have been somewhere in the direction of the star Vega.
Yeah, actually, I have some uplifting news.
Okay.
Okay. Brexit boom. Manufacturing jobs rise 24%. Growth accelerates. CV Library research indicates that British manufacturing has seen a 24% increase in advertised vacancies over the last 12 months. It's great to see that employers in the manufacturing sector are remaining positive, said the Independent Board's founder and managing director, Lee Biggins. This is particularly good news for active job hunters and anyone who may be looking for their next role. If you're starting to get itchy feet and feel like it could be time to make your next career move, there are an abundance of great opportunities in this industry right now. And it says that the news is just allays a series of blows to EU loyalists, hoping that the uncertainty around Britain's economic relationship with the European Union after Brexit Day in 2019 would damage the economy and make their pre-referendum Project Fear predictions appear more credible. It looks like Brexit is not having, people were saying that it was a very bad decision, but it looks like it's not.
Not having that kind of a negative impact.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the EU wants to make sure that no one else tries this, and so they're
Right.
going to make it very, very difficult and very expensive for Britain to leave if they ever do leave.
Right.
Well, we were talking about with Koo-Yeon Lee, who was here with us recently, is that after 2 years, right now there's a 2-year period. And to extend that period officially, all remaining, 27 or 28 countries would have to agree, would have to allow that. But to get around that, the chief negotiator may be able to just declare that, okay, negotiations aren't over, so we'll just extend the negotiations.
Right.
So there's a lot that is uncertain, and I don't know what's going to happen 2 years from now, and 2 years, actually a year and a half from now. They've already used up 6 months of that 2-year time. But obviously, EU wants to make sure that no one else tries this. But at the same time, EU is facing more and more opposition from within. Catalonia, and Poland and Hungary and Czech Republic, Austria, these countries on the eastern front of the EU are now sort of reacting against the dictatorship, the dictatorial powers of the EU. So we'll have to see how that develops. That's going to continue to sort of simmer for the next couple of years. I don't think it'll really get exciting until probably the last 6 months. You know how procrastination goes,
Right.
jockeying for position, all that. All right, we're at the end of our broadcast now, and we thank everyone who tuned in, and thank you for Dr. Richard Panzer for coming in and joining us this morning, and hope that you have a good day. It'll be a pleasant day, but a rain tomorrow. So God bless, Godspeed, and may His kingdom come.
May our streets be filled with joy.
Injustice bow to Jesus.
May injustice bow